Yo, what is poppin', everybody? Dom Richie here, back on the Shuffle Squad YouTube channel, and I'm just getting back from Lima SPE, where I did get top 128, which wasn't my best finish ever, but Zach did top 16, and we saw a large, not a large meta shift, but over the past, 2 weeks, or maybe 3 weeks since I've last done a meta forecast, we have seen a lot of this meta changing. So we're gonna jump into this. We do have some new decks coming out, new decks that have arisen and have really proven to be really strong. And also, if you've noticed, we did fix the colors on the recording here. I found out that because my monitor is higher quality, the monitor that this is on is a higher quality monitor than my recording software supports, that it was just kind of screwing it up and making the colors weird. So we had to downscale it. But hey, you know what? The colors look better. You can actually see the emblems. So hopefully it just works better. So as always, we're going to start with the first pick, which is Arc Armarouge, is a TSS loss this week. I initially was like, Arc Armarouge is kind of cool, but it just kind of gets abused by Dust Noirs. You really can't use Armarouge EX as an attacker because you're just not getting Charcadets up. Arceus in general just isn't great. It's just everything's KOing it. The game is too fast for a deck like Arceus right now, unfortunately, but that kind of just happens. The next deck is Snorlax, and Snorlax seems relatively good right now. It takes a solid spread into the top 10 decks. Raging Bolt is a really good matchup for you. Dragapult is fine. Charizard is fine. Turtle is winnable. I don't think Turtle's great, but Turtle's definitely winnable. Palkia is winnable. There's just so much you can grab from some of these decks, especially if they're not playing heavy switch cards, heavy switching outs. It's just kind of Snorlax just seems fine, right? Not a lot of people are teching for Snorlax right now, and that's when Snorlax is at its best. So for that reason, we do have Snorlax over here in the A tier. The next deck I'm going to talk about is Chien-Pao, which for C in Chien-Pao, we're going to put it in the C tier. Chien-Pao is the Pokemon that gets hurt the most by Dusknoir. Just the ability to go Dusknoir, KO your Frigibax, boss KO your Baxcalibur. You're not having a good time as Chien-Pao, and it's unfortunate because I actually really like Chien-Pao. I actually think it's got a really cool spot in the meta when stuff like Dusknoir isn't a thing, but as long as Dusknoir stays prevalent, Chien-Pao is just not a deck that can function. Lost Zone Box is probably another C tier deck, unfortunately. It's honestly just not fast enough to keep up with the meta, and with cards like Dusknoir, with cards like Iron Hands, Iron Hands isn't as big, but with Miraidon staying big, Lost Box just doesn't have a spot right now. And it's unfortunate because Lost Box does rotate soon, but I don't really think Lost Box is coming back again until it rotates, in which case it'll be a sad day when we lose Lost Zone Box. That being said, you got a little bit going for you in that you beat Raging Bolt pretty well. And some other decks are okay matchups, like Regidrago is bad. I'm pretty sure Gholdengo is probably pretty solid. Dragapult is probably bad. I just don't see how we're playing Lost Zone Box right now, but that kind of happens. And then the D1 Gholdengo hater, as always, is actually not going to put Gholdengo down in the TSS loss category. I think Gholdengo might actually be creeping up towards the top 10 best decks in the format. Your matchup spread is pretty solid. You can beat the big stage 2 decks. You can also beat the turbo Raging Bolt decks. That being said, I'm not sure how great your Terapagos matchup is because they could always just KO with double Dusknoir. That being said, though, Terapagos does struggle to hit that number on Gholdengo, so maybe that's another good matchup. Maybe Gholdengo is a very good play coming up. I actually might move Gholdengo up higher. Because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, Gholdengo loses to Palkia pretty hard. I think that's just a given because they can go double Dusknoir, Palkia KO, win turn 3. Or they could go if they go first, they could go Greninja KO 2. What are the Gimme Ghouls? But I think Gholdengo is a really solid play going into this event, actually. The more I think about it. So I think I'm actually going to put Gholdengo up in the A tier. I don't think it's a top 5 pick, but I think it's probably just on the cusp of that top 10, and I think it's actually a good play coming into this. TSS lost Dialga kind of has this Chien-Pao effect where yeah, I've got my Metangs up. I'll Dusknoir KO Metang, Boss KO Metang. It's ooh, that's not good. That being said, 220 is a good number to hit for. If you have Vitality Band, you might stand a chance if you go first at beating a deck like Turtles, at beating a deck like Palkia, any deck that has a 220 HP basic. But I just don't see the play right now for Dialga. And Dipplin is another deck that's a really cool single prize deck. It just can't win when Dusknoir's around. They can just delete your whole engine and then you just lose. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. Miraidon is probably another really good play, probably better than Gholdengo. And Miraidon's good. Miraidon beats Palkia, just so you can take extra prize against that deck. Miraidon can beat Turtle pretty easily because you're just fast. Miraidon doesn't struggle as much into Raging Bolt anymore, just for the simple fact that Raikou can now swing higher numbers, so that's always a good thing. Zard is still borderline unwinnable. Dragapult is a bad matchup. And I think, like, Miraidon still got Miraidon's issues. It's not as consistent anymore with Area 0. We did have to cut, obviously, cards to find those spots for those Area 0s. So, it's a give and a take. I think Miraidon's really cool for this event. I don't think it's that, like, I don't think it's a bad play at all. I don't think it's, like, the perfect play. Would I say it's the play? No, absolutely not. But that is okay. If you like Miraidon, just play Miraidon. This is very much a regional where I'm like, play your comfort pick, and I'm sure you'll be fine. Unless your comfort pick is Ancient Box. Boo Ancient Box. Boo single prize decks right now, unfortunately. Dragapult is the first S tier deck we're going to be talking about. Obviously, we've seen Dragapult dominating the meta lately. It's been the most played deck over the past, like, week and a half, I do believe. Someone will have to fact check me on that, but I believe over on, like, Play Limitless, it's been one of the most played decks. If we look at conversion rates and how well decks are doing at events, it's doing very well there, too. We did see at Lima, it was half of top 8, which is ridiculous. We have seen it have success, obviously, at Dortmund, obviously at Baltimore. Dragapult was good. Like, all these events, Dragapult was just good for, and I think Dragapult stays very, very good going into Louisville this weekend. Gardevoir, unfortunately, is probably another C-tier deck. Maybe Gardevoir's B tier. I don't know. Dusknoir just hurts so bad. Gardevoir is a cool deck. I like Gardevoir a lot. I think this new Turbo Dragapult is bad for you. Gardevoir probably is fine in C tier. That being said, now it's going to win the event because I put it low. I just don't see the appeal of playing Gardevoir right now. And Greninja's in the same boat. I really don't like Greninja too much. It's like, I don't know. It seems like it could be cool. It's a turtle killer. That's cool. You can take 3 prizes a turn with Mirage Barrage. That's always a good thing. That being said, though, it's like, if your one good matchup is turtles and you're losing to, like, everything else. Well, actually, you beat Miraidon, too. So beating Miraidon's a pretty cool thing to do. You probably beat, what's this guy here? Iron Thorns. Hydrapple's a D tier deck. I think, or the TSS Lost tier. I think Hydrapple could be cool. I just think that Dipplin being able to be KO'd by a Dusclops and not a Dusknoir is scary right now. I think Hydrapple is just not fast enough for the meta we're going into. If the meta slows down by a turn or two, I think Hydrapple is really good. But I think, like, right now, we're in, like, a 3 or 4 turn meta game, and Hydrapple needs, like, 4 or 5. It's just not winning games fast enough. In a deck that it takes longer to win games is Iron Thorns, and I think Iron Thorns is relatively cool. I think obviously you're bodied by this new Dragapult variant that doesn't play Pidgeot. But like other than that, like if you look at all the decks that are doing well, like obviously if you're Iron Thorns, you're bodying Gholdengo. As long as they don't play like double Cologne or whatever. I think Miraidon's a fine matchup. Palkia is probably a fine matchup because you're swinging for weakness as well. Charizard is a fine matchup. Like, I don't know, Terapagos is probably bad because they just don't set up Pidgeot and they still just sit there and just keep doing stuff. But whatever, we can dodge Terapagos. Lugia, another A tier deck. I think Lugia is always going to be a high placing deck, it's a good deck. If we've seen Rahul on an absolute tear with this deck lately, and I don't think we can just ignore that in a sense that, like, you don't top cut 3 events with Lugia and not say Lugia is a good deck. I think Lugia is very, very good. Going into this event, I think Lugia still is very, very good. You're just like, when you roll well and when your deck functions well, you can't lose to anything. Except Iron Thorns, obviously, because you're not playing it out to Iron Thorns. But that being said, if Iron Thorns is looking like it's going to be big, maybe you just play, like, Fluttermane. I don't know. It's tough to think about. Maybe I'd want Fluttermane if I were to play Lugia. I'm not playing Lugia, so I'm not thinking too much about it. But if you're worried about Iron Thorns, play a Fluttermane. If you're not, don't play it. Lost on Tina, unfortunately. I'm putting that in the TSS Lost tier. Lost on Tina, I just feel like doesn't have a place right now, which is unfortunate, but it happens for Tina. And then Roaring Moon, I'm putting Roaring Moon in B tier. I think Roaring Moon is, as straight Roaring Moon, I think is probably okay. The only issue is the decks that you have to Frenzied Gouging, they can go Dusk Noir, KO, and then like Turtle's auto loss. Auto losing to Turtle really, really hurts. If you think that it's not an auto loss, I recommend you play test that matchup a bit. And if you're losing as Turtle, you need to stop playing Turtle, because like it's hard to lose to what is probably going to be one of the most popular decks going into this event, right? That being said, I think Roaring Moon's okay. It's consistent. It does what it does, and it's just going to stay in the B tier for that. I do think that Losta or Pokehive, he has a really cool Roaring Moon with Dusk Noir list. I think that's a really, really cool deck. Where you're just kind of going Rare Candy, Dusk Noir, KO stuff so that you can just go Calamity Storm instead of Frenzied Gouging. It's a really cool deck idea, and I heavily suggest you guys check it out. If you don't follow him on Twitter, it's I think it's just Pokehive. There's tons of cool information there, tons of matchup spreads. I really highly recommend you check it out. The next deck I'm saying is probably mid is Noivern. And the reason Noivern's mid is everybody's like, oh, but Noivern, everything's a cool basic right now. And I'm like, yeah, except Dragapult is really big, and that's just bodying Noivern because you don't attack with abilities or anything. Terapagos is awful if you're Noivern because you can't Cornerstone them and you can't Noivern them, because if you Noivern them, they're just going to go double Dusk Noir, KO your Noivern. So that's not good for you guys at all here. Okie dokies, probably just don't play that deck. Regular Palkia or Palkia Pogos, I think is a B tier deck. It's just okay. I think Terapagos is just better. But I think it's still like a relatively really awesome deck. You can swing a lot of numbers, Terapagos just can't, so I think that's neat. Palkia is a really efficient attacker. If you'll notice a lot of the best decks right now are just efficient attackers. Decks like Palkia, decks like Terapagos, they're just efficient attackers with Dusk Noirs. Right? And I have talked about that with some of the locals over in Peru. Dragapult is a really efficient attacker. Charizard's an efficient attacker, and all these decks are really good, right? Now, someone who's not really an efficient attacker is Regidrago. But that being said, he's an easy attacker to power up. I'm gonna put him at the top of B tier. I think Regidrago is fine. I don't think it's great. Raging Bolt is still a bad matchup. Maybe Regidrago and Gholdengo can switch, okay? I think that makes sense, right? I think Regidrago is still really cool. I think your matchup spread is like, if you roll high and you roll well, you're still going to win games, unless it's against Raging Bolt. That 1/1 Noctowl line, I like 1/1 Noctowl. It's hard to find space on the bench for it, and you have to cut 2 cards for it, so it's also unfortunate for that, but I think it's a really cool idea, and it just can help you find stuff like that energy switch, like whatever you need, right? Sablezard, probably don't play probably do play Sablezard for this event. Not do play it, but like, it's probably not that bad, okay? It's probably around Gardevoir tier. I think Sablezard is cool. Your matchup spread, Sablezard can be changed a lot depending what you're playing. I think your matchup spread is fine. You take a good Raging Bolt matchup, good thing to have. Terapagos is probably fine. Looking at the rest of the meta, I'm like, if you just play like double Devo, you're probably bodying Charizard and Dragapult. As long as Dragapult doesn't like destroy you turn 2, because that's it happens, and it's unfortunate, but it does happen. Yeah, I think Sablezard's just kind of fine. If I was to play any Lost Zone deck, it's Lost Zone Sablezard, I think. Terapagos. I love Terapagos, and I think it's a S tier deck. I actually think Terapagos, I think if Terapagos was more accessible and more beginner friendly, I think Terapagos would be tier 0 and we'd be in Terapagos tier 0 format. That being said, Dragapult can be a tough matchup, as well as Regidrago. But besides that, like Terapagos, like those are your worst matchups, I'd say. And they're like 60-40s. If your worst matchups are 60-40s, you're probably a really, really solid deck. Terapagos is a very like high skill ceiling deck. You can be very skill expressive with it. You can win a lot of games on like turn 3 by going like, your opponent's taken, let's say, 3 prize cards. You just go double Dusk Noir, KO Briar, whatever. And yeah, the deck is just ridiculous. TSS Loss is Turbo Hands. Pitch Control is another B tier deck. Pitch Controls actually probably should be higher. I have Snorlax still here, not changing it because y'all still don't like it. I think Pitch Control's fine. Like, I don't know, someone will pilot it well. Lugia is still gonna poo-poo on you. I think Terrapagos can poo-poo on you. It's definitely, it's a time. I don't think Pitch Control is the best deck ever. I don't think it's bad though. Charizard is another deck. I'm like, this deck is probably very good. Probably high A tier. Charizard kind of seems like the obvious play for this event. You beat Terrapagos. It's another one of your Terrapagos' poor matchups is Dragapult, Charizard, and Drago. But I think Charizard's a solid play going into this event. It can kind of beat everything. Dragapult is a matchup. I don't think it's a good matchup, but it's definitely not as poor as everybody made it out to be. I think Dragapult used to be a much worse matchup before you got cards like Briar. So I think Charizard is probably a solid play. It hasn't been performing too well. At Lima, it did get top 4. But I think Charizard's fine. Zoroark is probably another... Zoroark I could see actually being really good. And that's just if someone figures out a list. Maybe not that good, but maybe C tier. Maybe Gardevoir's B tier. I'll give Gardevoir some slack. It's a B tier deck. Yeah, Gardevoir seems cool, I guess. Zoroark seems fun. It can hit a lot of high numbers. That's really cool to do. Getting your damage out there can be difficult though, so that's kind of the only issue I have with it. And speaking of damage, we have Raging Bolt, which is going to be the bottom of A tier for right now. And the reason for that is kind of like Raging Bolt is... It's a beginner-friendly deck. It's got heavy sequencing. It can do a lot of damage, but that being said, the meta is looking more and more hostile for it. Dragapult is not as good of a matchup anymore. Terrapagos is a bad matchup. Block is a bad matchup. Lugia, if they're playing double Chinchino, is a bad matchup. Palkia Dusknoir is a good matchup though, and I think it's a S tier deck. But like, I think that Raging Bolt has seen better days to play. I think it's seen worse days to play. But this is kind of where I'm looking at right now. Palkia Dusknoir is my second best deck in format. It's probably what I'm playing going into Louisville. And the reason for that is like, Palkia's really efficient as an attacker. And you can go like Dusknoir, KO stuff, board wipe your opponent, and win on turn 3. Decks that do that, decks that can take advantage of Dusknoir are just very good for this event. So yeah, this is where I've got the tier list right now. If you disagree with me, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear it. We get back to every comment on the channel. If you agree with me, let me know. I have typically been right with these tier lists, as much as everybody likes to hate on them when they come out. My job is to look at the analytics and tell you guys what the plays are, and I'm telling you, these are the plays. Not pictured as well as Cloth. I think Cloth is actually probably a very solid play. Probably B tier. Probably around Gholdengo and Pitch Control. Cloth is a cool deck. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. This has been Dom Richie on the TSS YouTube channel. And peace out and have a great one.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.